Now let's move to Parliament. Power cuts, unpaid Eskom debt and public servant salaries took centre stage during President Cyril Ramaphosa's question and answer session in Parliament today. He's told MPs that it's unacceptable that municipalities and some government departments owed the power utility over 50 billion rand collectively. Unfortunately, he's announced there are no immediate alternatives to addressing power cuts at schools. Senior reporter Siphamandla Goge has been listening in. He joins us live now. So, Sipa, good afternoon. Has the session ended? And if so, just tell us what the main focus of the President's questions in Parliament were today.
Well, a session that started at 2 o'clock saw the President answering a wide-ranging form of questions, ranging from Eskom, the issue of public service and the issue of salaries. But most importantly, Eskom took the center stage as it was to be expected. The President urging South African citizens to pay for their bills, to pay Eskom what they owe Eskom, urging government entities, government departments and businesses to pay what they owe Eskom. If I remember correctly, the President said something in the region of about 500 billion that is owed to Eskom, and he said that is unacceptable. Our viewers would recall that there is an ongoing debate about South Africa's biggest township, which is Soweto, whereby there have been calls to scrap the 5 billion rand debt that the people of Soweto owe Eskom. And the President is saying, well, in the meantime, Eskom will have to collect whatever revenue it can collect, whatever Eskom is owed, it has to be paid, because Eskom needs that money urgently to service the debt. You would recall that the finance minister, when he was in Parliament, he said at some point South Africa will need to decide what happens with Eskom's debt, and the government may need to inherit that debt because it's unsustainable for now, and something has got to be done about it. Let's take a listen to how the President answered the question about the debate that is going on regarding the issue of Soweto and scrapping that 5 billion rand debt.
One can understand where the Premier is coming from. It's an aspirational wish that it would be good if that were to be done. Now, at the same time, we've got to balance this aspirational wish with other considerations. The first is that South Africans must pay for the services that they use. The user pay principle does need to be observed by all of us, largely because as the state carries quite a big burden and a heavy one. When you look at our budget, the social support of our budget is way over 50%. But at the same time, one understands the hardships that the people, not only of Soweto, but poor people around our country are going through. Prices of nearly everything have gone up. At the same time, we also have to understand Eskom's own position.
And the President also speaking out about municipalities spending a fair amount of time talking about the problems at municipal level, but also speaking quite strongly about the money municipalities owe Eskom. I mean, in the region in total of about 50 billion rand. It's astonishing.
Indeed, and also bearing in mind that Eskom is struggling. Not only Eskom, but the South African purse will not be able to deal with this unserviced debt. If Eskom is owed about, or should I say, if Eskom's debt is about 400 or 500 billion, you would assume that if municipalities collectively owe Eskom about 50 billion, yes, they may not be enough to assist Eskom, but Eskom needs to collect that so that at least they can be able to to close this gap. Now, if that money is not paid, Eskom will keep on going back to government to ask for more money. Government is struggling as we speak. The South African economy is not going at a rate which is required to ensure that at least government is able to assist state-owned enterprises. Eskom is very strategic. Without power, without energy, nothing can be done in South Africa. You need Eskom to be fully functional, to be fully sustainable, to be able to grow the South African economy. The president saying there is no other way about it. You need to pay for your services. Let's take a listen.
The debt that is owed to Eskom by our municipalities as well as government departments stands at more than 50 billion rand. We have made it clear that non-payment for services is unacceptable and have taken a number of steps to ensure that payment of these debts is recovered. For this reason, we have established a multidisciplinary revenue committee, and Eskom is part of this committee, to address payment of debt to the utility by municipalities and various other organs of state.
And of course, inevitably, the question about load shedding and the impact of load shedding had to be asked. We're still cycling between stages 1 and 2 with a specific concern at the moment about matrics writing their finals because schools, it seems, cannot be excluded from load shedding.
Indeed, and that's very devastating if you bear in mind that already there have been some reports of schools that have been affected by that, some matriculates that have been affected by that, schools and hospitals or healthcare facilities. Yes, some healthcare facilities have been exempted, but there is an ongoing outcry about schools. During this time, matriculates are writing, but they have to bear the brunt of load shedding, not only them, but the entire South African population. It seems as if there is nothing that can be done about it for schools at this moment and for matriculants, and many people are hoping that it will not have a negative outcome when it comes to the final pass of the matric this year. Let's take a listen to how the president responded to that question.
The issue of load shedding is a challenge and a problem to all of us collectively as South Africans. And I would say that it isn't correct that we only focus on the economic side or businesses. We do also focus on the hardships that are imposed on the people of South Africa. And to this end, we've taken a number of measures and steps to address the challenges, for instance, that are faced by our hospitals, our health centers, who, whenever there is load shedding, it interrupts their work, and dangerously so, because sometimes it happens during operations and other various intricate processes that take place in hospitals. When it comes to schools or centers of education, they are so widespread. We've got some 25,000 schools, some 25,000 universities, and a number of TVET colleges. Whilst we want Eskom to safeguard a number of places where there is a gathering of people involved in particular functions, it is difficult to say that we will safeguard or we will come up with immediate alternative measures for each of the 25,000 schools.
All right, thank you very much for bringing it all together. That was senior reporter Siphamandla Goge just reporting to us on what the President was saying in Parliament this afternoon.